When I look out my window, many sights I see. So many people to be. Oh no, must be the season of the witch. Yeah, must be the season of the witch. That's the name of this book, Season of the Witch, by David Talbot. I'd read another book by David Talbot, which I reviewed here, the one about the CIA, Devil's Chessboard, that's what it was, about the CIA, and it was really good. I listened to it in an audiobook. It was really good, and I really liked it. How did I come by this book, which I didn't even know about until I heard about it and then ordered it? Yeah, I bought this one, which is rare for me, buying a book, because he didn't have it at the library, and I felt bad about David Talbot having another stroke. So as far as I saw what was it? There was a podcast that American Experience, American something or other. There's a video thing that I watch sometimes, and they were talking about. Oh, there was a tribute to David, I think. A lot of people came on and talked about David Talbot. And, people, friends of his, Oliver Stone, other people like that. And so, knowing that he was out of work and out of money, and I thought that I would just buy the book. I looked at the PayPal thing, or the help what GoFundMe thing, and that was doing quite well. So that wasn't that necessary. So I thought I'll buy the book, So anyway, I bought the book, and it's been sitting around here for a while, and I finally got into it and read it. And what it is basically a history of San Francisco. And it's, kind of interesting in that way, in that it doesn't really go out of San Francisco. So it's a history book that stays in one particular city and goes through from 1966, something like that, until into the 80s, and tracks this one city and what goes on there during this period. So the beginning of it is the hippie flower child thing, in the late 60s, from the Summer of Love, and actually he quite likes the Moby Grape, and I like the Moby Grape, band Moby Grape, and I first heard them when I was a kid in Ohio, when their album came out. One with this on it, and then there was a censored one with that not on it. But how did I hear that in Ohio while I was still in high school, whatever, in 1967? Somehow Omaha was on the radio, so underground music, yeah, but underground music that also was being promoted by Columbia Records. So all that stuff came out of the big record companies once people got signed contracts. So we hear about some of the players and some of the people that went on, some things that went on. There's certain number of things about Big Brother and the Holding Company, and actually he says the Moby Grape was like the best band. They were like really good for a short spell, but they kind of went to pieces pretty quickly with around the time that Skip Spence kind of freaked out on LSD or whatever he freaked out on, and couldn't perform anymore. I never listened to Orr. I should listen to Orr, the famous Skip Spence album. But So yeah, there's a lot of stuff about the '60s and those bands. Big Brother, he talks about the players in Big Brother. One is a guitar guy who was in it, and where he came from, and what he was into, and Janice, and how Janice was, kind of a ratty person in a way. And in one scene, she's injecting somebody with heroin who didn't, what kind of initiating someone into heroin who didn't want to do it particularly, and so stuff like that. And I saw Janis Joplin perform in 1969 during the summer. That was the summer I graduated from high school. And it was at Blossom Music Center, which is still called Blossom Music Center in Ohio. In Cuyahoga Falls, it's not called, the Staples Center or whatever, not attached to some sort of other corporate thing. But so it was a lovely place back then. You could bring, back in that era, you could bring all kinds of stuff into that kind of place. So you could bring a cooler in with your own beer and so on and so forth. Contrast that years later when I went to a similar place in New Jersey and to see Todd Rundgren and Hall & Oates, and they wouldn't even allow me to keep my bottle of water when I entered. And when I bought some water there, they had to take the cap off. They couldn't give me a bottle of water with the cap on. I'm like, what? What do you mean? It's like, so, the hell with these places. But anyway, back then, you could kind of do whatever you want. And so anyway, we were kids, and I don't think I was 18 yet. Was I 18 yet? Yeah, I guess I was 18. I guess I turned 18 in November of the year that I graduated from high school in '69. So yeah, so it was the Full Tilt Boogie Band, and we sat up on the lawn and got drunk, and then at the end we all went down to the front of the stage, and we're quite close while Janice was finishing her last couple of tunes, and I can't really report much of what it was like. You could probably look at a video of a typical Janis Joplin show, and that's probably what it was like. I was kind of drunk, actually, and actually it was the first place I ever smoked pot. Somebody supposedly had some pot, and I had not from our group, but some other group, and I smoked some pot. But so it goes through through that period, and but as I said, it just keeps moving through the decades. Actually, it starts out with these Irish. This Irish attorney named Vincent Hallinan, Hallinan, and he and his family, they were kind of like activist liberal attorneys, and so he sort of talks about them in the very beginning and how good they were and that family was for the city. Actually, it was one of those guys who got dosed by Janis Joplin. I think it was Terry Hallinan, who had that happen to him, and he was interviewed for the book. So it goes through that period and all that, and it was pretty interesting. Maybe some new information that I didn't really know about. I knew a little bit about that place and that time. I don't really have much West Coast experience. I only was in California one time, which was probably around 1980-ish. and I'd gone to a voice workshop in Mexico and met a Bennington student. It was a voice workshop for summer for Bennington students, and held by Frank Baker and Michael Downs, who were the teachers. Frank Baker was a legendary teacher at Bennington High School, and he'd had a stroke, so my voice teacher had a stroke and couldn't sing himself, so figure that out. But I had an interesting time at that thing, and met a California girl, an LA girl there, and then I had a car with me because my mother had died a few years earlier. So I had a Honda Civic 5-speed that I had driven out there from New York State. And then Susan and I traveled around California a little bit. And so I was in San Francisco for, a few hours. So I really don't know anything about the place, personally, as far as living there. I'm glad I'm a New Yorker and not a Californian. It sounds kind of crazy out there. LA or San Francisco, whatever. I think I'm more at peace and comfortable in the East Coast than California, with all the things that go on out there, and crazy things do go on out there. So after that wave of the hippie thing, and everybody was going out there, I got involved with recruited into the hippie thing through television, but I was more of a yippie type, so I was kind of more interested in the political angle, which is why, like when I talked about I talk about books about, the gurus and all that, I was not attracted to that Indian thing at all. I was interested in, smashing the state for with the yippies, so, which is, another whatever, but it seems a little more wholesome than the religious thing, anyway. So he goes on then to talk about the 70s. We go into the 70s, and it's more of the gay thing that really took off in San Francisco. And interesting to note that in one thing I picked up out of this book that I wasn't really cognizant of, hadn't put together, hadn't thought about, in that November 1968, like within 10 days of each other, the People's Temple thing went down in Guyana, where 900 people were killed, poisoned, self-poisoned, or killed by him or whatever. But and they all had roots in San Francisco, because they'd come from San Francisco. He'd started, I don't know, in the Midwest somewhere, and then moved to California, and finally ended up in San Francisco. And then from San Francisco, took everybody out to this Guyana place where they're going to build a paradise for all these elderly black people and so forth that he had in his outfit. But people were impressed in San Francisco by the church, because it was a integrated thing. It did have black people and white people. Jim Jones was quite a mover and a shaker. And actually, it leads into 1978, where George Moscone and Harvey Milk were assassinated by this former cop and firefighter Dan White, this young guy. And so the two stories of People's Temple and the assassination fit in together, because actually the People's Temple were helped really get these people, Moscone, into office with like, stuffing the ballot and stuff like that. At least that's what he says in here, that there was a lot, considerable voter fraud that had Moscone elected, and both Moscone and Dan White were quite involved with People's Temple. They would go to events there. Moscone would he liked black women, even though he was married and all this, a nice Catholic boy. But he liked black women, which of course Jim Jones could provide for him. So they would party and all that stuff. And so when they went off to Guyana and all the hell broke loose, this sent shockwaves through the administration in San Francisco, even though those guys knew that Jim Jones was kind of off. Like, he would wear his sunglasses all the time. He was a speed freak and a weirdo. And it's amazing how these people, drugged out freaks, end up getting power. Power. Yeah, that's as far as I go here in my life, I find that any people who get power, particularly men, but basically anyone or any organization, outfit that gets power ends up abusing it. People get power over others and end up just, fucking over other people with it. So, I don't really think that highly of the human race anymore. And, now that I'm old and on the way out of it, it's like, see you later. I mean, who cares, I don't, I'm not going to hold on to this shit, trying to live every ounce of life. I mean, who the fuck cares, So yeah, when Dan White killed these two guys, it was really a political thing. It was about this sort of liberal government that had been brought into, that had, become the power in San Francisco, which was, really good in my perspective, of course, and many others, even though, it was sort of sleazy how they get in. People also said, well, George Moscone was a good mayor, so it was good, and he was good for the city. So this was really a political hit, this guy, Dan White. And, he was going to kill two other people. He was going to kill two other people that he thought were, part of that group that was, the liberals that were tearing apart the traditional Catholic San Francisco. Of course, after all this, we found out what was really going on, particularly in lovely Catholic San Francisco, with the priest diddling the parishioners and the kids and so forth. So that he points that out in here too. But so Dan White, didn't he got like sentenced to 7 years or something for manslaughter for these two complete murders that everybody knew what went on, and that caused riots in the streets with particularly gay people who were pissed off about Harvey Milk being killed, and that so when he got out of prison in like 5 years, and then on parole, and then he was continued to sort of be harassed, even though he went back to his family and his he had like 3 kids or something and a wife, but he ended up killing himself at age 39. Dan White did in 1985, doing the garage bit with carbon monoxide in the automobile, which happened to my father's wife, his final wife. She had had a husband before, and they'd produced lots of kids, and her husband actually had done that too in the garage. After having meeting her and so forth, I can see why that would have occurred. I'm not friendly with her, and I don't even know what happened to her anymore. So my dad's been dead for 25 years or whatever. So 22 years. So yeah, so we have all that going on in the 70s. These 2 massacres going on within 10 days of each other. So it was pretty intense. And then Dianne Feinstein, who died I don't know within this year, I think, after being a kind of a zombie congresswoman for some sort of a period while she was out of it, very, very old. I mean, we're talking about the 70s here, and that was almost 50 years ago. So that's when she was, and she was not that young then. So that we saw the ending of Dianne Feinstein with her daughter or someone telling her what to vote for. Yeah, just vote yes, whatever. So Dianne Feinstein became mayor. Then that was the beginning of her political career. She was a supervisor, one of the supervisors, as was Harvey Milk, and so she knew those people. And actually, she went to Harvey Milk right after he was shot, and see if he was dead, and realized he was, and so forth. So she was there, right there with the horror. So she became mayor, and maneuvered things and that she stayed pretty much on the same sort of program, even though she was much more conservative. She stayed with the same program that Moscone and Milk and company were onto, and also, sort of, but kind of, the cops. Actually, the cops were like celebrating when Dan White did this assassination, and like they played Danny Boy in the over the cops PA system or whatever, is reported in this as a tribute to Danny White. So they were down with it, but somehow Dianne Feinstein was able to deal with these 2 sides of the thing, and keep the city at relative peace, I guess, for a period. So that was all kind of interesting, and then there's a couple chapters about the 49ers. I skipped those. That was something else. The city was going to rise because they all went around this football team, and they like won or something. I don't know. I skipped those 2 chapters, so I don't really know, because I don't want to read about football stuff. I'm from Canton, Ohio, where the Football Hall of Fame is, so I don't give a shit about football stuff. I think it should be banned. It's an idiotic, brutal sport. Well, it's great for America. It's typical American kind of a thing. So enough about football. So I didn't read the football stuff. Then we went into AIDS. Of course, it was then the 80s, and of course AIDS came rolling in, and it was a big deal in San Francisco, and he talks about how Dianne Feinstein and San Francisco handled it, which they put in a lot of money into supporting people with AIDS. They gives a comparison of like, a small city, relatively, San Francisco doing like 7.5 million one year to support people with AIDS, or deal with the epidemic, the crisis, as compared to 1 million that was spent in New York City, for instance, and Ronald Reagan being president, not talking about it for years and so forth. So all that was, kind of the dismal AIDS stories, was kind of the ending of the book. So it's kind of this kind of a downward trajectory, really. I mean, if it's sort of a history of and microcosm of America, we have this sort of a youth thing. I mean, the Summer of Love and all that really was because of the demographic bulge of all these people, baby boomers, my age, so forth, and MK Ultra and LSD and all these things, and but that kind of youthful exuberance of that period, and how it drifted into these other things, and ultimately, turned into these really kind of dark things like the People's Temple and the assassinations, and then ultimately the AIDS crisis, and which came out of a scene of kind of extreme partying that went on at the end of the 70s. So I guess that's about what I have to say about Season of the Witch. It was pretty good. I would recommend The Devil's Chessboard over this because it's more relevant and more interesting. And this is a history of San Francisco, and it was kind of interesting. It wasn't the greatest read for me particularly, but it was okay, and so that's all I got to say about that.